All right, there we go. It's actually connected this time. Let's not hold our breath. The gerbils or the hamsters on the wheel might slow down and lose their connection. Folks, welcome back to Rugby Ascendant. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania, and you may have noticed I'm wearing Dallas Jackals kit today. Whoa, check that out. Inaugural season, terrible towel there, and also the scarf there. Why is that? Well, today we have on the guest the new general manager of the Dallas Jackals, who've just completed their first season. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk ahead of time, so I'll do my best because I tend to pronounce things phonetically because of my second language being German. So I would pronounce your name Santiago Sodini. How close was that?
That's perfect. Yeah,
Excellent.
you can call me Santi. It's easier.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you've got that your whole life. That's your nickname, Santi. Well, Santi, you've just been hired recently to be the general manager there in Dallas. You must be excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank you for having me here. And yeah, we started in Dallas last week, and yeah, it's been great so far. Trying to put everyone on the same page, trying to learn from our past experience, and yeah, going forward to the 2023 season. Yep.
Well, before we get into the Jackals and your Major League Rugby experience and other things you've been involved in, I understand that if I got it correctly, unless there's someone else using your name, that once upon a time you were a prop when you played rugby. Is that true?
I used to be a flanker as well, at the number 8, and then I play as a prop. Yep.
You don't look the stereotypical sort of build for someone in that position. How'd you pull that off? You must have been a really strong guy on the pitch.
I tried to. Yeah, it was a tough game to play back in the day, but it's a long time ago now, and I cannot do that anymore for sure. So the only way I can do it to be next to the boys and try to be helpful when they go and have fun. Every weekend. Yeah, that's the only thing I can do at the moment.
Now, for those who don't know, I imagine people probably figured it out, unless they're guessing you're from Italy, but you are from Argentina, and I believe you were born in Rosario. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. My family, I have a Italian heritage in terms of my family, and yeah, I started playing rugby there in Rosario in Duendes. That's my hometown club, and then after that, I played in Australia, Italy, and England. Long story short.
A prop. But look at this guy, folks. He looks more like a winger to me, not a prop. But seriously, so you've been a player. You're also been a coach, and you've done some administrative work, and now you've got this responsibility to take on the Dallas team, which has had its first season, and admittedly a tough season for the Jackals. They had some bright spots during the season. I don't know if you kept up with them, because did you just come over from Rugby ATL? I know you were there last year, but were you there through this year as well, or are you doing something else?
No, I was here in the USA. I was based in Miami, Florida. Yeah, but I mean, we are part of MLR, so I kept watching the games. I kept in contact with everyone. So yeah, I've been part of the whole season, and yeah, I mean, of course, when you start, it's tough. You need to start is the first step, and of course, you are learning. It's the only way. It's a tough process, but that's the only way to learn, and get better through competition. And of course, we're learning from that, and we're going forward. That's rugby. Is go forward. That's the only way we can go.
Well, that's a great philosophy. A number of great rugby coaches over the years always of the opinion. Next up, the next game matters. That's what matters. Don't dwell on the past. And I think that's a healthy thing for all rugby clubs. For the Jackals, though, I think you've got some bright spots here. You've got some very talented young players on the team, some experienced players. I was down in Dallas recently, and I interviewed Adrian Boysen, who's a national side player for the Velviches and Namibia, who just qualified for the 7th straight Rugby World Cup. Congratulations to Adrian. And also you've got Adrian Carlson there, who was, I know, from Rugby ATL in Atlanta, and then went over the Jackals. You've got some other talented players in the squad. So I think you've got a nucleus there to build upon. There's a great opportunity, I think, here in Dallas. But let me ask this question. I think job one right now, I suspect, is finding the next head coach for the Jackals. You and the team are working that, yes?
Correct. Yeah, that's our main goal, and that's where our all our resources are working towards to announce a head coach on the next couple of weeks. That's going to be making everything smoother for everyone and clearer for the organization, the players, the staff, and the fans, of course.
Well, you say in the next few weeks, then that means you've probably already got candidates in mind or already talking to people, negotiating would be my expectation. So I'll have to express my profound disappointment. I didn't get a text message or phone call offering me the head coaching position in Dallas, so I'm kind of disappointed.
To be honest, we really enjoy everything you do outside of the field, with everything you do to spread the word instead of the rugby world, and so yeah, we prefer to keep it this way.
Well, they probably wouldn't want to see me up in the booth during a rugby game if I was the head coach, because I'd be like Henneke Meyer. Yeah, I'd be blowing out the microphone to my coaches on the field. They'd be like, he's on the phone again. Yikes. But seriously, so now there's a little bit more about your background here. You grew up playing rugby. When did you start playing rugby? Was it a lifelong thing, or did you come to it later? Because a lot of Americans don't get introduced to rugby until they get to the club level at college or university. Yeah. So what was it like for you in Argentina?
Yeah, in Argentina we started early on our lives. It's 12 years old. That's where some of us start earlier, but that's when you are in primary school, you start there, and we started from there. I played a bit in my school, but my home club is Duendes. That's where I spent all my life, and that's where I have all my friends there. And I studied there, and I started playing in first division in Duendes 20 years ago, in 2002, and that's where I started everything. And as I mentioned to you, I played professionally in Australia, Italy, and England, and I finished playing and coaching in England in 2016. And that's where I can say I didn't enter anymore a rugby field as a player.
Well, on your time on the pitch when you played, as you said, you played around the world. I think you played with Conor Murray when you were in England, if I'm not mistaken, and you played with a lot of other players. Who was probably the most interesting teammate that you had in your experience?
I would say George Smith, Australian. So George was with the Wallabies, and we were in Manly, and to have him there, it was quite an experience, because it was the same time that they were trying this ELV laws, so it was a trial. So he would be doing the jackal in each breakdown, and we would be getting 20 turnovers per game, because he was playing for us. So that was quite an experience with him, and he could play. He could play in any position in the field. So I would say him.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So, of course, for those who follow rugby in the Americas, we all know that the big powerhouse on this side of the world is the Pumas. Argentina has the hands down the best national side on this side of the world, the Western Hemisphere, and with good reason. They've got a great program. They compete very well. I think that their inclusion in Super Rugby actually was kind of a boost here recently, although Super Rugby has kind of died now. But with the Jaguares being in the competition, it really was interesting to see. The Pumas just put Scotland down two matches to one. Congratulations to Pumas. I assume you're a Pumas fan. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, I'm a Pumas fan, and I have a lot of friends there in the team as players and people, involved in the staff. So I can say I have a lot of connections there. Yeah.
Well, they're quite a world-class team. They've been in the quarterfinals before. So, and historically, a lot of people look at Argentina and think they're relatively new on the stage for World Rugby, but they're not. The Pumas have done well in the past. They've had some rough patches, but they've done well, and they're definitely a top 10 team. Really impressive. And the reason I mention that is that, of course, here in North America, for the longest time, the top team was Canada. The Canadians dominated the USA. Of course, we didn't have a national side until the mid-1980s. Of course, we were the reigning Olympic champions from 1924, but there was no rugby between 1924 and Rio. So in that gap, we had no national side. It wasn't until 84, and that's how I became a Springboks fan. I'm a huge Springboks fan because when I started following rugby at university in the early 80s, we didn't have a national side. And I looked at rugby, and the Springboks, interesting, started following them. But the Eagles weren't around. Now, Canada's been the dominant power for a long time, but we flipped the script on them for 2019, and we qualified as America's one, and they were number 2. Now, this time, Canada is eliminated. The United States is almost eliminated. We're hanging on by a thread. We lost to Uruguay, who earned their way to the World Cup as America's number 1. And then Chile, Los Condores, destroyed us. They shocked America. Now, not me. I mean, I was nervous about them, particularly in that I don't know if you watched the game, the Mud Bowl down there in Santiago.
Yeah, I watched both. Yeah.
When that score was, that try was scored at the end of the game, I'm like, no, it's not aggregate points that's gonna haunt us. And in fact, if you take that try off the board, the USA is the Americas 2. But now we go to the repage. And the reason I mention all of this is that it looks like South American rugby has come a long way. Brazil seems to be improving dramatically. Any thoughts on rugby? We'll get back to Major Rugby and the Jackals here shortly. But any thoughts on South American rugby? Is it as strong as it appears to be and up and coming?
I think that the big difference now with South American rugby is that they have a plan. That's what I believe. You have high performance rugby now. I think, as you mentioned, with Argentina competing in Super Rugby and competing every year with the best in the world, I'm talking about All Blacks, Australia and South Africa. Argentina got a lot of information about the things that work and the things that not work very well in the high performance ambient. So if you want to get to a tier one level, you need to do certain things, and one thing is to have a proper plan. And I believe they did it. They had a plan, they focused on that, and they went forward. And now they are getting good results. I mean, Uruguay has their own stadium with everything in there. The high performance center is in the same place. That's El Charrúa, Estadio Charrúa. That's in Montevideo, Uruguay, which makes everything, let's say, easier for them. So to your question, I think that USA is a big country. So for logistics, it's bigger, and of course, it takes more time and to prepare a plan and prepare everything, because it's not like, again, as Chile and Uruguay, that everyone is in the same spot. So they are all the same. All over the year, they're in the same place, training together, and they have the Super League, they have SLAR, the South American Super League, which makes everything, let's say, better for them, easier for them, because they play in a professional level against other teams in South America for 4 months. So we can say they have most of the year covered, training and playing in a high performance summit. This is my point of view. This is why I believe Chile and Uruguay got better, and with the support of Argentine Rugby Union. And I think it's great. And I think Canada is going to be getting better, and USA as well. I mean, I don't see any problems. I believe that with the Rugby World Cup coming in 2031 and the MLR, there's only one way to go up and forward for Canada and USA. I mean, North America rugby.
No, that's a great point. And that's where I was building towards this, because when you were with Rugby ATL, you had several roles, one of which was the high performance manager, and you worked with their academy there of sorts for youth to get kids involved. Of course, those who follow rugby in North America know that one of the biggest challenges we've always had is that in America, kids grow up with baseball and basketball and football, American football, not soccer, American football. And yeah, and then also, but these days, even soccer, kids grow up with it. But rugby's not something most American kids grow up with anywhere. But that's beginning to change, and the appearance of Major League Rugby is having an impact on that, because as I grew up in rural Appalachia, we were happy to have electricity and paved roads. We didn't have rugby, so I knew what it was, but I didn't play it. And that's a shame. I would love to have played it growing up. I played it as an adult, but not as a kid. And you have to start young. I started playing baseball when I was 9. I was already considered old for starting baseball at 9. You're supposed to start when you're 6 or 7, and I started at 9. So if I had been able to start playing rugby at 9, imagine the skills I could have developed, the understanding and appreciation for the game. Right. We're getting there now. Now, you played that role at Atlanta. What was that like? And does Dallas have a similar program, or do you intend to introduce something like that to get youth involved in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Yeah, so correct. So yeah, I did that in Atlanta with we put a program that include all the southeastern region, including Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, of course, South Carolina. We would like to do the same here. We have good connections with local clubs, and we want to spread not only to local clubs in terms of Dallas. We want to spread our region to Oklahoma as well, and to make sure we provide what they need. They need us in terms of coach education. They need us for resources. We can help. Same thing I was talking about, how Argentina is supporting the other South American unions, rugby unions. We need to do the same with our local teams and universities. We need to make sure that they have everything they need, and we can provide a lot of that with, as I mentioned, coach education, and make sure they can their players and coaches can have exposure to high performance, so they can see there is a pathway for them. So when they say, okay, I want to be an Eagle, I want to play the Rugby World Cup 2031, because I believe more and more kids are going to be having that goal in their minds and going to sleep and dream about that. And we need to make sure we provide a good pathway, and we provide the resources to help them perform when they get there. And if not, maybe they say, I just want to play rugby, it's just for fun. We just to help them to make friends, and if they want to come to watch a proper rugby game, a professional rugby game, we will need to provide a nice experience as well for them as well.
Well, that's an interesting approach. So that's good to hear that you're trying to develop the youth, because, I mean, that's really the key, getting kids. I mean, imagine if Perry Baker had started with rugby instead of, football and other sports and track. He's already, the Sevens Player of the Year twice in a row before he's injured. Imagine what he could have done. But Dallas, it's a big town. Everything's bigger in Texas, Cowboys, oil, caballeros, it's much bigger. It's easy to get lost in the mix. I mean, Dallas is a huge town. Dallas-Fort Worth is a megapolis down there, massive, occupies so much territory, such a big town. It's easy to get lost. But I got to say this, my experience down there was fascinating in the time I spent in Dallas, in that it seems like you have, it may be small initially, but a very dedicated fan base that really was happy to see the team come to Dallas and is showing up and showing its support. Do you think that's an encouraging sign, or are you worried at all that it's such a big town that another sport like rugby could get lost in the mix and it get hard to get attention?
I think that it's the best place in the world in terms of sports. This is what I believe. This is why I'm here, because you get Dallas Mavericks, you get Dallas Cowboys, the biggest sports franchise in the world, not in the USA, in the world is the biggest one, and it's just 300 meters away. We have Texas Rangers, that we're close to them, and I worked before with FC Dallas, and the only thing I can see is this is great. This is great for us. We have, in terms of logistics, you have a great, a great airport that you can fly from all over the world to watch sports events here. So when you talk about Arlington, especially, it's a sports mecca. You have everything here. North Texas is playing soccer in our stadium, Choctaw Stadium as well. So there is an eSports stadium as well here. So I cannot see any problem on that. I can see that the fan base, as you mentioned, is eager to more sports events. Maybe if you go to LA, you would like to see more, let's say, more in terms of films, and you can say you would like more music concerts. But when you go to Dallas, you will say, let's go and watch sports events. That's what I believe. I've seen the attendance. It's been great. First season, of course, we didn't have a great results in terms of the team, but the fan base is there. The fan base is there, and it's exciting as well.
Well, absolutely, and that's something I definitely saw. There was a very enthusiastic crowd that showed up. I made it to the last game, and as you mentioned, Dallas is a great spot because it's a major aviation hub. You got Southwest based out of Dallas there at Love Field, and American Airlines is based out of Dallas. And so, although I'm not going to speak about American Airlines right now, I'm not happy with them. Whoops, we've lost Santiago. Are you still there?
I am here. Yeah, can you hear me well?
Your camera went off.
Okay.
I probably just because it's probably on a timer, so it's okay. We got you back. Okay, yeah. So I was
Yeah.
saying that Dallas is, of course, as you say, a great transportation hub. But also, if people want to go to a Jackals game, you can make a weekend of it because you got family and kids. Six Flags is right, almost next to the ballpark.
Correct. Six Flags is there as well, and you have a great opportunity to spend time and have a great experience, like going to Orlando and go to Disney World, Universal. You can go anywhere in Orlando, and you are going to have a fun weekend. Same here. Same here. You go to Arlington. You come to Arlington, and you can do everything. And you can watch rugby, and then you can stay and watch an EA Sports event, or stay, I don't know, North Texas on the next day. XFL is coming as well. It's great.
And actually, the day that I was there to watch the Jackals and their home closer at the end of the season when they played the Utah Warriors, the Rangers were playing the same day. In fact, a lot of people came over from the Rangers game and came to the Jackals game afterwards, which actually saw the crowd size grow during the game, which was interesting. But let me ask you about this. Now, when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, this is interesting. When I went there, I was really impressed. The Jackals are playing in the Rangers' former stadium. It is massive, but they've built a grandstand for rugby specific, which actually puts the fans in a very good position to observe the game. But the reason I mention this is the huge size of the stadium, which is one thing. But the other thing is that you've got world-class locker rooms, media facilities. Everything there is top-notch. This isn't some little pitch that someone built in Iowa, knocked down cornfields, and if you build it, they will come. You've moved into an incredible stadium there. I don't know if the Jackals' long-term plan is to stay there, but what are your thoughts about the stadium? It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's incredible. As you said, it's incredible. We can do everything here, everything. So again, when you go to other franchises in the MLR, and when you go to other sports, it's difficult to have everything in the same place. That you can have your HQ, your offices, your gym, your meeting rooms, everything that you need for your high performance side on the same place as with the stadium. So for the player experience, it's great. It's great. And then, as you mentioned, having these great stands we have in the stadium, it's awesome because that gives us, the bar. That put the bar really high to say, okay, this is where we need to go. Maybe not next year, maybe the next one, but we need to make sure every year we're getting better, bigger, and more attendance. And of course, maybe one day we're going to have 20 or 30,000. I coming from, I worked a lot with MLS teams, soccer teams, and this is the way they started. They didn't start with 40 or 50,000 people in a game, but you have, I lived in Atlanta, and you have Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta United home stadium, and you get 80,000 people there. So what I believe is that's what we have here is a great way to start and to develop our organization. Yeah.
Well, fair point. Soccer, they tried to get a big start of that. They brought Pele in to play for New York back in the day in the 70s, and it didn't really work. It didn't make money, and it kind of died off. But then Major League Soccer came along, MLS, and really changed the focus. And they, as you say, they focused on smaller and build profitability and consistency, and then went from there. And now they're huge. So that's one part of it. And I think that Major League Rugby has a similar sort of plan, although I can't speak for all the owners and management groups, but I suspect that's the case. But the other piece of this too, which we've already touched on, is that soccer, when I was a kid, nobody played soccer in America. I'm sorry. I know in Argentina they play it, and they play it in South Africa, but they didn't play it in America. We didn't play soccer. Who played soccer? Certainly not in rural areas. But by the time that I graduated high school and spent a year at university and really didn't apply myself, just before I joined the Army, I went off to work for my uncle for a few months in Maryland. And it was a very telling experience for me. It was the summer of 1983. And my cousin said, hey, let's go to the game. And so we walked down to the ball field, and I'm like, what's this? Soccer. I'm like, I thought you meant baseball. So I was so conditioned to expect a baseball game because it was summertime. And already on the East Coast of the United States, kids 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 were already playing soccer. And so we started developing good talented Americans that could play in the game at the international level. And that took time. We're getting that now. We've been lucky to be able to get crossover athletes like Perry Baker and Alev Kelter and others like that, which help, and Danny Barrett. But you really need to build kids up where that's their whole ethos is rugby. And so I think that your point about Major League Soccer is a very important one. People should understand, and that the USA, with 350 million people, the largest media market in the world, the richest nation in the world. I'm not boasting. These are simply the truth. The fact that it's not a colossus in rugby is an accident of history. And that accident, I think, is going to be corrected within a decade or so.
Correct. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. A few things to add. I work with FC Dallas. So, yeah, I worked in Dallas before with FC Dallas, with their academy and with their high-performance team. And what they did with their academy is great. They have 6,000 players in their academy. So when you think about that, and as you mentioned, the league started in 1996, and they struggled a lot at the beginning because the Soccer World Cup was made before. It was 1994, and this is always, I mean, this is the other way. We are building a great structure. We are building a good league, of course, with academies. And the Rugby World Cup is going to come in 9 years, not before. So we're preparing ourselves to have the Rugby World Cup and to have a team to be part of it, and not to compete and be able to compete and maybe get to the playoffs or semifinals. Yeah, that's our plan here. That's our plan. And at the moment, you have more than 5 million players registered for USA Soccer. So again, as you mentioned, this is not a sport that was great 20 or 30 years ago, and you could see the growth. And yep, we are just looking forward to that ASAP, because players and families are looking forward to get more involved with rugby.
Well, in fact, I think you're probably well aware of this, but the USA is actually, I think, the third largest number of registered rugby players in the world, and people don't even realize that. So it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. I mean, there's, of course, a few other countries that got more players than us, but we're really, really on the cuspice of getting somewhere. Folks, you're listening to Rugby Ascendant. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. My special guest today is the new general manager for the Dallas Jackals Major League Rugby franchise, Santiago Sodini from Argentina, from Rosario, Argentina. Now, so let's talk about that very quickly. My programs, people know, of course, I speak 6 languages. So when I saw that you spoke 5, I was pretty impressed. English, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and French. Now, obviously, I'm going to guess Spanish was your first language, and I'll make an assumption, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably learned Italian in the house because maybe the family held on to those cultural ties. Italians tend to do that for a couple generations anyway. I could be wrong. And the Portuguese and French, probably because they're Romance languages, easy for you to study and learn. And then English, you really don't have an option if you want to travel the world. So how accurate am I? You're a polyglot. Does that kind of spell out how you got there, or what did I get wrong?
Yeah. No, you are fine. You are close to that. Yeah. So we could say you got it.
Well, which language? So Spanish is your first language, yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
correct.
so that's your mother tongue. So which second language are you most comfortable in?
Italian. Yeah.
Ah, okay. There you go. Italian.
Yeah. I mean, after English. Yeah. After English, of course. Yeah. Italian. Yeah.
Okay. Now you played in Italy. Did you live there for some time?
Yep.
Where were you at? In Padua?
Padua, yeah, that's up north.
Oh, I know where it's at. I used to live in Grisione do Socco, which is near Vicenza.
Okay, yeah, it's not too far. Italy, you cannot say that anything is far away. It's not like you say you are in Seattle and we are in Dallas. No. This is not, Italy is not the case. Everything is
condensed,
pretty close to everything.
Really close, yeah. No, I know Padua very well. Very well. I spent a lot of time. I was stationed at Vicenza from 1997 to 99, and I traveled throughout the country. I was responsible for a number of things. I worked with the Carabinieri and the customs and with the military and such. It was a fascinating time. The big frustration for me in Italy was all the strikes, It's always a strike for something. It's the trains, it's the autostrada, it's this, it's that. There's always a strike, but that's Italy. But aside from that, I really enjoyed living in Italy. What about yourself? Was it a good experience?
Yeah, of course, of course. We were talking about that before that. You have the sea there, you have the mountains there. You are not far away from the Alps. You have great history. I mean, in Padua, Galileo Galilei, he was a professor for 25 years at the university. The university has more than 800 years, so there is a lot of things to visit, to learn from, to study. Of course, you can go to Rome, and great history as well to learn, to study as well, and of course the food there. The food is incredible. The food is awesome. Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know everything about you, which would probably be a lot of folks, I'm sure your family and others and you work with and work for probably know a lot about you, but some people might go, oh, look, this guy was a rugby player and now he's the general manager. What's that all about? Rugby players can be leaders, but beyond that, you've also been involved in the business world. You've done international consultancy. You've also worked with sports leagues. You mentioned Major League Soccer, but you also work with baseball clubs and rugby clubs. So you're accomplished off the pitch as well in the business world. So you're bringing your business acumen and your experience and success to the Jackals, not just your understanding of rugby as a player and as a coach. I should think that that's probably why Dallas hired you. I mean, look, I don't want to inflate your ego or pump you up or something like that, but I would imagine that's why they sought you out and said, we want Santi to be our general manager, because it's not just an understanding of the game of rugby, but also business experience and acumen. Did they talk to you about that? Was that important in the hiring, or is that like, you can't share because it's hiring practices?
No, I mean, it's something I put it, let's say this is my goal every day, to add value and to make sure that every decision I make is a data-driven decision, not something that is just because of I want or someone else wants. I want to make sure that every decision we made, we have data, and because at the end of the day, we need to have, of course, a winning team, a profitable organization, because we're talking about long terms all the time, and we were talking about how to expand and grow the game, and the only way to go is that rugby organizations have to be profitable outside of the, when we're talking about numbers. Talking about my background, long story short, yes, I have a business degree. Why I'm saying this, because I didn't believe that I would have a chance to play professionally when I was a kid, so I always try to study and to work, and that's why I try to keep learning and keep working apart from playing rugby. Same when I was in England, I kept working and studying there, and besides the playing professionally there, because I knew that this is maybe a message for players or professional players, that sooner or later you will have to work, and you need to find the things you would like to do after you finish playing professionally. And I always thought that I wanted to be keeping involved in a rugby organization. That's how I felt. So I kept preparing myself and studying to make sure when I try to add value to any process in the organization, any process, if we're talking about the academy, if we're talking about the commercial part, or we're talking about the high performance part, we need to make sure that, again, we make decisions with data, and I can say something that is not going to be a problem for someone else, and I'm helping with the things I'm saying.
Well, Santi, you said something very fascinating there, and I want to focus on that for just a moment, because I know that you were like the business development manager for Stats Sports, and you talk about data-driven stuff. Now, I think a lot of people, when they think of rugby, they're probably not thinking of statistics and data. I mean, a lot of baseball kind of geeks are really into stats. They get it. And even some other sports, statistical driven models. We've seen that in Major League Baseball, where franchises were turned around because they had people come in that were focused on data and statistics, and it helped players adjust their performance and understand where their shortcomings were and where their strengths were, and adjust to that. Is data something that's helpful for rugby? I mean, could it be a way that could help maybe the Eagles or help the Jackals in the coming season, if you take a close look at data and how players are performing, and what sort? I mean, is that a useful tool? I mean, I don't think most people think of rugby and go data. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, we're talking about rugby experts all the time. So when you talk about coaches that are coming or players that are coming, to any organization or the things you need to do on any organization, you need to talk properly. So, for example, if a player gets injured, you need to understand why he's getting injured. And we need to, what data brings us is a way to reduce the injury risk, for example. So we need to understand if we're doing something wrong, because this is not saying, we're doing everything perfectly. Maybe we're doing something wrong, and the only way to check that is through data, because if we don't know if we're doing, what are we doing, if we don't measure everything, of course, we need to divide between data and information. Data is just, data points. So you have 20 players and you have a spreadsheet. You don't need that. You need information. You need to understand this is where the expertise, the experience, and the knowledge of the high performance and the game and the sport, that's where the players come and the coaches come. So because they know what to look for, okay? They know what to look. So when you need someone to be fast, what you look to, when you say we need a winger to be fast, you need to look at his high speed, high speed running. You need to look at his top speed during a game or during the training session. That kind of stuff helps. Of course, we need to make sure everything makes sense and everything is information to play, because we cannot be on the other way. Paralysis for analysis. We need to make sure that the information we're using is useful and not a lot. And that's the sweet point. Get in there, have information, but at the end of the day, we need a lot of knowledge as well. We need to know a lot of the game, and again, we need a lot of video as well. Nowadays, the video is a great tool. When you talk about the sport the way it was 30 or 40 years ago, no one knew anything about the other teams, but nowadays you can check a lot of the things the other teams are doing, or teams on the other part of the world. You mentioned Super Rugby, you can check if Crusaders or a team in France, in England, how are they playing, and you can learn from them as well.
Well, thanks for explaining that. I think it's very helpful. People appreciate that. But listen, as a rugby fanatic, because that's what a fan is, a fanatic, as a rugby fanatic and a supporter of the game, I can tell you that I don't always need the data to identify bad decisions. So All Blacks, I know you're desperate, but diving into the ruck and hitting an Irish player 2 meters from the try line is not a way to win the game. I'm just saying. It's also a way to get injured. Yep. Speaking of the All Blacks, Santi, okay, so listen, I know you're close to the Pumas. You need to tell them to stick the knife in and twist it. The All Blacks are wounded. It's time to step on them. With the All Blacks, you don't quit until the hooter goes off and the official blows his whistle. When he blows his whistle, then you can relax. Because I've watched the All Blacks down 21 points with only a few minutes left come back and win. They are always hungry. They take their rugby very seriously, but they're wounded now. Now's the time. The Springboks need to sweep them, and the Pumas need to take them down. This is the year.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because Argentina is playing in New Zealand, so it's going to be a tough one for them for sure. Yeah, of course, New Zealand is under pressure now, the coaching staff, the captains, and the leadership group, but I'm sure they're going to be performing well, and they must be in a tough position at the moment.
Well, they are. And look, so just to let you know, so you understand, in interest of full disclosure, I think much of my audience knows this. So it's Springboks always, Eagles, never the All Blacks, and all but England. So whoever plays England is my favorite team that day. I don't care who they are. And usually whoever's playing the All Blacks is my favorite team that day too. So just so you know. I do root for the Pumas unless they're playing against the Springboks. Then I can't root for them. But anyway, otherwise I root for them. But Santiago, Sodini, we're going to let you go here in a couple minutes. But let me just ask you a couple more things before we wrap up. And thank you for your generous spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it. So for you, I was in the Army. I spent 36 years in the Army. I moved 26 times in 36 years all over the world. Lived in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, the United States. Moved all over. Now, you as a professional athlete and some of the business world, you've moved quite a bit too. And, every time you move, it's a different experience, even though you may have done it many times. What's it like for you coming to Dallas? Are you moved there now, or are you just living there like in a hotel temporarily, or have you already relocated to Dallas? And if so, what's the reception been like?
No, first of all, the reception has been great. We are just confirming a few things to move there. At the moment it's just a hotel in Arlington, but yeah, that's the plan is to be in Dallas, full time and make sure that everything is working without problem. I mean, not to moving back and forward from Florida to Dallas. That's not the idea.
Well, for Jackals fans, I think the most important question right now is something we started the program with in the conversation, and that was job number one, which is to hire a coach. And let me share some thoughts and then see if you agree or disagree, because I'd be interested in your perspective. I've always told people that, coaching is important, and I've coached youth, I've coached adults and in multiple sports, basketball, baseball, softball, and other sports. But for me, coaching is important, but the one sport where coaching can make all the difference in outcomes, I've always thought, is definitely in rugby. What I mean by that is that take a look at Stuart Lancaster had a good team in England, but they were knocked out of the 2015 World Cup, which is kind of embarrassing for England. Stuart Lancaster's a great coach. I mean, he's got it. And pretty much with almost the same squad, Eddie Jones came in with a different approach, and they won an 18-game winning streak. They rose up to the top, almost took over the world rankings, and England has been, until recently, pretty consistent under Eddie Jones. You can make a huge difference. He went to Japan. Look how Japan became a tiger in rugby. And I'm not just saying Eddie Jones. There's lots of other coaches that come in. Gary Gold came in, and the USA went on a tear, winning all its test matches in the season. It never happened before, even beating Scotland that year. Coaching can make all the difference in the world. So for you all, after a difficult first season, which you weren't there, the team went 0-16 in its inaugural season. That's kind of sucks. But, I mean, it's a new club. That happens. You got to build a team and a culture. This season, if you get the right fit, you get the right coach and the right assistant coaches, you guys might come out and be competitive this next season. I don't think it's beyond the possibility for Dallas fans to think that their team could compete this coming season. What do you think about that? Do you think coaching can make all the difference?
I agree with that. We can be competitive. I agree. I fully agree with you, and I think that we need to trust the process. We need to build a competitive process. Again, the process already started last season. Of course, there are things that we need to learn from. We need to get better. But the good thing about our approach for next season is that we have a place to start from. Of course, again, for the fans, it was tough for watching Dallas Jackals the last season, because no one wants to watch your team and lose. But our main goal is to. The other day, we were talking about what style of rugby we're going to be playing. We want to win in rugby, because it's a tough season. It's a long season. You start playing in winter. You play in Boston. You play in Toronto. You play in Seattle. And during the winter, it's tough. There is snow, and then you finish playing in Dallas, in Atlanta, or in New Orleans with 100 degrees. In summer, in July. So you need to be prepared. As a team, as organization, to make sure that the players, the coaches have the resources to execute during the games. If this is going to be a rolling ball, okay, let's use the rolling ball during the winter. Or if we can pass the ball and play, let's say, nice rugby during the dry weather when we go to Utah during the summer, okay, let's do that. We need to be prepared.
No, that's a good point. Interesting for Major League Rugby, it spans the North American continent. We have a team in Canada and probably more coming up, and teams across the United States. And today you could be in Seattle where it's freezing rain. Tomorrow you could be in Louisiana where it's 100 degrees. And next week you could be in Boston where it's snowing, all in the same season. That's quite a difference. I mean, people play in England, it's kind of the same weather. It's just raining or it's not raining everywhere you go.
Yep. Same in France. Most of the year is tough regarding winter, regarding the weather. Sorry, and then when you get to May or June, when we're talking about playoffs or finals, you can get a sunny day, but then the rest of the year is tough. Yeah, as you mentioned.
Well,
talking about the coaching,
yes.
Yeah, talking about the coaching, of course, it's going to be key for us to have a proper coaching staff. to help us get start to win games and maybe get to the playoffs. Why not?
Absolutely. That would be amazing to see. And you've got kind of a natural rivalry there just geographically between Austin and Houston. You got kind of a triangle there of these three teams. Certainly Austin and Houston have no love lost for each other. I saw that in the final game of the season. I flew to Dallas, drove to Houston, watched the last game of the season there, and it's pretty clear that those two teams have a little distaste for each other. I don't know if the Jackals are innocent bystanders, but I could easily see a three-way, rivalry developing there in Texas. That would be interesting, especially if the Jackals become competitive in the short order. That would make Austin and Houston nervous because both of them were competitive this year.
Yeah. I mean, having the possibility to play, to have fans, our fans to when we play away, it's awesome. I mean, when I was in Atlanta, it was tough for the fans to go when we play away. Only they could go drive. Sorry, they could drive when we were playing in NOLA, but having teams in Texas is great. Is what I believe. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Santiago, Santi Sodini, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. I can only wish you the very best of luck as the general manager for the Dallas Jackals. I don't know the hiring process, but I got to say I'm happy with the outcome. It looks like they've got the right guy in the right place at the right time, and hopefully you can snatch up the right coach and make a difference there for Dallas and see you guys competitive. Let me give you an opportunity to share anything you'd like to share for the Jackals fans, or anything you want to share about rugby, or anything for the future, the World Cup, anything you want to share, and then we'll wrap it up. Final words from Santi Sodini.
No, just want to thank you for having me here, for your time, Chris. It was great, and we're waiting. We would like to have all the fans, all the rugby fans from Dallas and the region on our first game next year. We would like to have the season schedule as soon as possible, so you guys can start getting tickets and be close to us and start working together. That's all.
Well, there you go. And that's the answer, folks. If you want to see rugby succeed, whether you can make it to the game or not, buy a ticket. If you can't make it, give it to a neighbor, give it to a kid. Listen, Santi, before you go, I just got to say, I have never introduced anyone to rugby who has not fallen in love with the game. My nephew never heard of rugby. I took him to when we had pro rugby a couple years ago. Columbus played Colorado for the final game. I drove to Ohio. I took my nephew. He loves the game. He's a big rugby fan. Every person around the world, in Africa and Europe I've ever introduced to rugby, they fall in love with the game. And for me, it's because rugby is a game in which, for the most part, nobody has a big ego that they're so important, some big multimillionaire who won't talk to the fans. Every rugby player I've ever met will take the time, regardless where that, to say hello, to sign autographs, to talk to the fans. And it's a game in which you may play your heart out on the pitch and it might be 51-0, but after the game, people shake hands and they get along, and it's really about community. And people are always talking about inclusiveness. Rugby's definitely a game that includes people. We've got rugby for wheelchair rugby. We've got beach rugby. We've got sevens. We got 15s. We got rugby league, and we've got men and women. It's a great game and it's fantastic. And that's all I can say about rugby. I'm just trying to prophesize. All right. So, yep. So, Santi,
completely agree.
You completely agree. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and best of luck on the coach hiring, and we'll look forward to that announcement hopefully sometime in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Chris, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
All right, folks, that's been Santi Sodini from the Dallas, I started to say Dallas Mavericks, but that stuck in my head from earlier, from the Dallas Jackals. Anyway, folks, we'll catch you here next time, and tune in shortly on Chris Wyatt Reports. A news report will be delayed today. We're starting at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is 6:30 p.m. in South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. All right, to my guests, thank you very much, folks.